heart of South Philly. Let's go see what the people have got to say.
I'm ready to roll, baby.
Now listen here, Dutch. Mets and the Cowboys, they suck.
1, 2, 3, go Birds! Go Birds!
Here we got 302BIRDS, Gino Stinks. Go Birds!
Oh my gosh, Chad.
Your favorite Chicagoan. Go Phils.
As always, God bless. Go Birds.
Get your water ice and soft pretzels ready because you are now tuned into a 302BIRDS podcast experience. Proudly presented by TickPick, Nick's Pizza, El Diablo Burritos, and Klondike Kate's on the heart of Main Street. Let's take it to the show.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 302 Fantasy. This will inaugurally be the last time you guys will ever see me getting hype on your Saturday morning. So in honor of that, I think you should like the video, share it, all that good stuff. But really excited to be here this Sunday morning for you guys, bringing you guys the fantasy football breakdown, joined by our two main hosts, Benny and Dennis. Welcome to the show, fellas. But look, we're not going to waste any time for you guys. We're going to go ahead and get it right into our first topic because we know we got the real fantasy football fans out there. But I'm going to kick it to Benny to give you guys a quick recap of week one.
What a weird week it was. We saw the tight end position only have 5 tight ends reach double figures. The rookies, though, look fantastic. But I want to start first with running backs. 20 running backs finished with more than 13 fantasy points. If you play in a league that has 10 teams, that means your 2 starting running backs at least were getting into double figures. But having 20 means that if you're in a smaller league, there's running backs there you can put in your flex that are still going to be productive. So the running back position is back. Saquon Barkley was the top fantasy performer in week one. Running backs now, especially for leagues that are drafting week to week or after the season started, to me, running backs are a position now that has to be valued amongst anything else. And, you know, we're going to talk about some key injuries to running backs this week with Christian McCaffrey and kind of how to handle that situation. But running backs, very valuable and something you definitely have to kind of start with your fantasy football roster builds week to week. Number 2, I love this crop of rookies. It's the wide receivers in this group of rookies are incredible. Xavier Worthy had 20.8 fantasy points in PPR. Ladd McConkey and Brian Thomas both had 14.8 fantasy points. Those are 2 guys you can throw immediately in your flex or your wide receiver 2 positions and get production. And then you saw Jaden Daniels kind of, you know, that offensive system is not sustainable at all for the Washington Commanders, you know, doing short checkdowns and just having Jaden Daniels run everywhere. But it's great for fantasy. He had 23.2 points. So even Jaden Daniels was a quarterback that finished with a fantastic fantasy week in week one. And then finally, of course, I mentioned tight ends. Oh, this offseason, everyone was hyping up the tight end position. They were saying this is going to be a fantastic year for tight ends. There's going to be so many tight ends you can roster, draft early, value early. Once again, it proved wait on tight ends because only 5 broke double figures. Of those 5, 3 going into the week were rostered in 31 or less percent of leagues. That's Isaiah Likely. He was a tight end 2 for the Ravens. Juwan Johnson and Foster Moreau, 6 and 0% of leagues had them rostered going into that weekend. So, yeah, if you picked a tight end early, you definitely felt it week one.
Now, Dennis, go ahead and take us through our injury report too. I know you dropped a video earlier in the week on it.
So biggest thing through the injuries this week is we already know Jordan Love is going to be out for 3 to 4 weeks. So if you drafted Jordan Love, put him on your injured reserve, pick up another quarterback. We'll go over that later of who you could pick up for some good pickups in that nature. Another one that shocked the world a little bit this week was CMC, Christian McCaffrey. A lot of us kind of seen the writing on the wall. The behind the scenes input from what's being said is there's a slight tear, but they're not confirming it nor denying it. So they'll put him on injured reserve. He's out till week 4 or 5. I don't think it's going to be too much of a hit to the 49ers. T. Higgins has popped up on the injury report again for Cincinnati. He's listed as doubtful now. Hudson's also listed as doubtful. Just bouncing through. Also with Philadelphia, now seeing that A.J. Brown is on the list for he's questionable. Again, AJ's a dog. We all know how he is. I don't think he'll miss the game, but it's early in the season. We'll keep an eye on that as well. Njoku's out for Cleveland. There's a lot of people that are popping up, but I think we're going to be all right. The biggest ones like the takeaway, CMC, AJ Brown popping up on injury. Of course, Jordan Love being out. And then if you had Tua, Tua's going to be out, so you want to pick up another quarterback there. That's pretty much all I've got on injuries as far as the keynotes that are coming out for me that have popped up.
Yeah, the Tua injury is just so sad. I mean, I don't really know what more to say at this point. Like the implication there is that he might not play again. So with that many concussions in how short of a time he's had that many concussions, you have coaches coming out across the league saying that they would tell Tua to retire. I'm a little nervous about that, specifically on for obviously for Tua's sake, but specifically in a fantasy sense for Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. That production and that kind of drop off in production might. I mean, Tyreek Hill was going second or third overall in a lot of drafts, and in some drafts he was being taken first overall. So to have that hit, I mean, CMC managers are feeling it. Tyreek Hill managers might be feeling it later in the season, especially if the quarterback drop off, or the talent at quarterback for the Dolphins drop off is that significant. And then you also have to think defenses are going to start changing up the way they defend the Dolphins. They'll put more guys in the box. What does that do for Devon Achane? So a lot of injuries, they scare me. Some even more injuries that I want to get to. Hollywood Brown won't play the regular season. So on a reverse side, stock up for guys like Xavier Worthy, for guys like Rashid Rice. And I would even go out as far as to say Travis Kelce managers are probably going to start to see. I mean, obviously we didn't get a chance to see everyone on the field together, but that game plan, those allocated targets for when Hollywood Brown was going to be back in the lineup, they have to go somewhere. And I think it's going to go Rashid Rice. Xavier Worthy's definitely going to get more touches. And I think that does keep Travis Kelce a little higher up on the game plan than he would have been if Hollywood Brown was in the lineup. I think there would have been more of a mix there with the Chiefs, who kind of like to seem to spread the ball around a little bit. But the one that gets me a little bit, and when we get into the next segment, I want to talk about is T. Higgins, because T. Higgins fascinates me a little bit. I've been very anti-Joe Burrow this offseason, very anti-Bengals for fantasy purposes for quite a while. And T. Higgins' hamstring injury, and I know there was Jamar Chase was sick the first week, and Joe Burrow's wrist. That just kind of seems like a bit of a cluster that I would want to avoid if you're doing a draft later in the season, or if you're an owner, you may want to start to put feelers out there for trades and try to capitalize on the value of these guys that you have right now versus holding on to them and kind of seeing what's going to happen later this season, which I don't think is going to be good.
Jaden Reed popped up on the questionable list just now too.
Oh boy.
For a Packer.
Rough.
Yeah, you're giving me PTSD over here with that name from last week.
Sorry, buddy. You
okay.
want the answer.
It's all good. It's all good. I'm only ball busting. But Benny, I thought that was beautifully said. Do you want to go ahead and take us into the Chill and Grill?
Yeah, so Chill and Grill, this is a segment that I'll be running. And of course, it's going to be more focused on the outlooks for the season. So we kind of talked about it a little bit in the injury report. What's going to happen with these guys throughout the season? Chill guys are ones that people are panicking on a little bit right now, but let's calm down with the panic. They're going to be fine. Grill guys are people that I don't really see many people panicking about right now, or maybe they are, and it's not getting enough steam. I think these are guys we have to kind of focus on and say, hey, there's a bigger problem here than what we're kind of hearing about right now. My chill guys we'll start with right now. Number one for me is Gus Edwards. And the reason why is this. I've seen a lot of fantasy leagues. I had to drop him in one league to pick up the handcuff for Christian McCaffrey. So I guess I'm going to kind of talk about both sides of my mouth here. But Gus Edwards is a running back that I would say chill on right now. I know people are kind of overreacting. J.K. Dobbins had a fantastic week 1 against the Raiders. The Raiders are a pretty solid run defense, and Gus Edwards is not the same type of running back as J.K. Dobbins. He's more of a physical running back, more of a downhill back. And the game script kind of led J.K. Dobbins to have a better day. I don't think anyone expected that day to come out of J.K. Dobbins, but it did. And here we are. It's a split backfield, though. And Gus Edwards did out-touch J.K. Dobbins in that week. Let's chill a little bit. Gus Edwards is going to have better matchups to come. And I think before you consider dropping Gus Edwards, unless you're going to pick up an amazing person on the waiver wire, let's throttle back on the Gus Edwards panic right now. Another one is DK Metcalf. A lot of people are starting to, put out trade feelers. What happened week 1? The Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos have a fantastic pass defense. Patrick Surtain is the best corner in not fantasy football, best corner in the league right now in football. Got paid to be the best corner in football. And still, DK Metcalf was out there for 88% of snaps. He's going to be fine. It's a couple of rough starting matchups for him. I think they have the Patriots today. And I think you just kind of calm down, weather the storm. DK is going to be fine. Once this offense kind of hits the ground a little bit in Seattle, I think DK is going to have some really big weeks. My final pick is Marvin Harrison Jr. And it hurts a lot of people because they took Harrison Jr. very early in drafts, first round, second round. If he fell to you in the third, you felt like you hit a home run. And then when you watched week 1, you saw the production. It was only like a point or two, and you're upset with what happened. I get it. And people were freaking out about the Kyler miss on that deep throw. Relax. The Bills are a fantastic defense. That was the first game. And what really does it for me is how many times are they out there for snaps? 90% for Marvin Harrison Jr. I think we can chill out on Marvin Harrison Jr. for right now. For my grill guys, these are guys that I think we have to kind of worry about a little bit, and I think people know where I'm going to go with one of them. Chris Olave is my first one, and the reason being is this. So when you look at all that's kind of happened in the career of Chris Olave, I would say it's been a little underwhelming. And he's a fantastic talent. I think on other teams, Chris Olave is a top 10 fantasy receiver, maybe even a top 15 to 10 fantasy receiver, a solid player. But last year, it kind of made me a little nervous about Chris Olave. He kind of burned me a little bit because he was going early and then kind of finished as like a bottom mid-20 wide receiver. I wasn't very excited about the production there. Last week, 2 targets against an atrocious Panthers defense in a blowout. He was on the field for 79% of snaps and got 2 targets in a blowout against an awful Panthers team that, oh, by the way, now they just lost their best defensive tackle. So that is not great for me. And when you look to start the season for Chris Olave, 9 out of 10 of these matchups the Saints are going to have early on are against teams that are really, really good in terms of pass defense, like the team they're playing today, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, I think there's some opportunities there for some late PPR spamming, some late game passes and completions to Chris Olave. But if I'm a Chris Olave owner, I'm a little nervous because you probably dropped a second or third round pick into him and you got what you got week 1. You got 2 targets week 1. And now you look at the rest of the season, not great for Chris Olave. Another player, and this is more of an indirect comment on another player out there right now, but Amari Cooper, or basically any player that's an offensive weapon for the Cleveland Browns. What is going on with Deshaun Watson? Now, we know what's happening off the field, and I'm not going to get too much into that. It's disgusting, and the legal process will kind of run its course there. But the NFL handles these things very interesting. And if he's suspended, I would actually change this and say Amari Cooper's stock would go up. But until that happens, Deshaun Watson's their quarterback, and that dude is awful right now. Amari Cooper suffered. You're going to see Njoku suffer. Obviously, he's hurt right now. You're going to see, their week 1 matchup, the top receiver was Jerry Jeudy. He had 11 points. And again, Dallas is a good pass defense, but even in garbage time, he could not get the ball down the field. If I'm a Browns owner of any of their weapons offensively, I'm a little nervous as long as Deshaun Watson's taking snaps there. And finally, Joe Burrow. we saw the bottle video. I'm not going to make too much about the bottle video. It looked like he was having trouble kind of picking the bottle up, flexing his wrist, really kind of stretching it out. Wrist injuries are a really difficult thing for quarterbacks to come back from. And the one he specifically has in the offseason, it was mentioned that quarterbacks don't get that. People that have an occupation of throwing an object for a sport don't come back from that type of wrist injury. There was tendon tears, there was bone breaks. And now we have a Joe Burrow after week 1 that did not look great. And he didn't play in the preseason. We heard in the preseason he was having rest days from throwing, which is not great. He's going to be without T. Higgins right now. He finished as quarterback 27 last week. If I'm a Joe Burrow owner, I'm a little nervous right now as to what the season outlook is going to be on Joe Burrow, especially with the fact that on top of all of these injuries, you have multiple wide receivers. They just so happen to be your top 2 that have contract disputes. Oh, Jamar Chase isn't happy. He didn't get paid this week, this offseason. T. Higgins is playing on a franchise tag. I'm a little nervous if I'm a Bengals owner right now. I think that team could be spiraling out of control. I don't know. I'm not going to give a prediction for wins and losses, but I can see this being a team now that, for fantasy purposes, to own anyone aside from Zach Moss, who apparently is their red zone running back for every time they get in the red zone, which I don't know if that's going to be a lot or not.
That team's going to spiral fast, and it's not looking good. And it's all because of what this league has become. Money, 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 money. Or it's coaching. I mean, we saw it with the Philadelphia Eagles last season, unfortunately, after the 49ers game, how everything spiraled. Jack, that's a great question. Would you start Marvin Harrison Jr., touchdown, or stay with Olave? You could go either way, but I would almost lean towards Olave because just Harrison Jr. is still a rookie. He's still got a lot to learn. He's not his dad yet. He's still got a lot of secondary moves to learn. And we'll see where that goes. We're going to land where we need to as far as him, but I would go with Olave. Waiver wire pickups on my end. I mean, I'm definitely looking at Jalen McMillan, Tank Bigsby, and Colby Parkinson, and then dropping Fairmouth, Adunze, and Algieri for running backs. Because the way I'm looking at it, Algieri ain't going to run the ball that much up in Philadelphia because we all know Bijan's going to get most of the touches. But I think this is going to be a defense that Philadelphia didn't have week 1. First off, you're back inside Lincoln Financial Field, one of the most dangerous places to play football. And I'm not saying that because I'm an Eagles fan. I'm saying that because it's the truth. Philadelphia is built, that stadium is built to hold noise, and it is built to make sure people feel uncomfortable. That kid has not played in a stadium like that yet. He's played in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, whatever. He's not played in Philly. Kirk Cousins has played in Philly numerous times. He played there week 2 last year when he was with the Vikings, and he struggled. That game, and Jalen McMillan had a great game last week with Jaden Daniels coming out for his first game. A lot of things you'll see from him. I think he's going to actually pick up where with Dotson now with Philly. I think it's going to pick up for him. 2 running backs, Pachenko, Dobbins, or definitely Pachenko and Dobbins.
Oh, yeah, you're starting Pacheco. Yeah, you're starting Pacheco. That's without a doubt. You're not. You're starting Pacheco no matter what. Rashad.
I would want to, but you can't put him over them two. You can't do it.
Yeah, no. So, okay, I think the question for Bryce is pick 2. Is it pick 2 running backs? I might be confused here, but definitely you're starting Pacheco. That's number 1.
Flex the other running back or choose Chase.
Okay.
Flex the other running back or choose
Rice. Rice immediately. Right.
Rice.
Yeah, you're starting Rice.
I'd go Rice. All day long.
I would say Pacheco and Rice. Just the Chiefs are interesting because they're a team where you can definitely put their running back in and their wide receiver in, and you're going to be fine. You don't have to worry about target allocation. Pacheco's going to get his 50-plus yards. He's probably going to get a touchdown. He's definitely going to be involved in the passing game. Rashid Rice, they run the same route with him over and over again. I want to say it's probably the most unguardable route in football right now, and that's that flat route he runs where they get him in motion. The corner has to go. They'll probably line up a slot where that means that corner has to work around another corner, which creates space. And as soon as you give Rashid Rice space, he's such a brilliant route runner. make the catch, and he does have enough speed to be able to pick up some yards. And they just kind of spam that over and over again. It's a great kind of safety valve for Patrick Mahomes.
He almost does like a 3-move bust before he breaks on the flat.
Yeah.
And the thing about Rice is he's so quick feet and he's quick minded. If he sees something he doesn't like, he shifts off of it. And him and Mahomes have built such a chemistry that they already know. You can't go wrong with Rice. It's one of them things. It depends on what they bring that day. Like yesterday, you saw in college football. I mean, any game could go any way. You know what I mean? It depends on what defense is going to bring that day. Reed Blankenship could shit the bed this week. I mean, sorry, it was there. I had to.
That actually might be a good overlay into our next topic, which was any given Sunday. So with that being said, I mean,
start
you
them,
want to take it
sit
first,
'em.
Dennis, and then we'll go to Benny. Start them, sit 'ems.
Let's do it. Start them and sit 'ems, baby. This is my segment. I love doing this with you guys. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody had a good first week of fantasy football. I did. I walked out 1-0. Yes, buddy, I did.
Awesome.
So remember last week how I did it? I did my start, then I did a sit, start, sits. We're going to keep to that rotation because it works out pretty well. I'm going to remain with starting Jalen Hurts. Yes, the 3 turnovers does hurt a little bit. It does worry me. 34 attempts passing, 278 yards rushing or passing, and then the 2 touchdowns, and he had 33 yards rushing. So that good combination there is going to help you. I'm going to start Devontae Smith with the 7 receptions, 84 yards, and only having 8 targets and missing 1 pass last week. You can't go wrong with the combination there. I'm going to sit Anthony Richardson just because the guy still hasn't proven enough for me to keep him in there. A.J. Brown, I would sit because I think with the hamstring, he's either going to be out or he's going to see limited targets and limited playing time. It's too early in the season that you want to risk A.J. Brown. I'm going to bring Dallas Goedert into the fold because now with A.J. Brown being out, you're going to see his targets probably pick up a little bit more. Last week, 4 receptions out of 5 targets, 31 yards. I got DeAndre Swift still sitting just because the Bears' offensive line is what it is. Deebo Samuel, 8 carries, 23 yards, 5 receptions, 54 yards, 9 targets. Deebo's Deebo. Deebo's going to land on the board for you somehow. He's going to pick up the rushing points, and he's also going to pick up receiving. And if he scores, God bless you. Taysom Hill out of New Orleans. He's going into Dallas. Dallas still has a strong secondary. And with him wanting to run flat routes and post routes and everything like that, if he even goes in the route of Diggs, he doesn't have the speed to break off of Diggs. Diggs can kind of probably hop the route quick if he breaks off the receiver, whomever he may be covering. James Conner, I got starting out of Arizona for running backs, 16 carries, 50 yards, 1 touchdown, 3 receptions for 33 yards out of 4 targets. And then Deontay Johnson out of Carolina. I mean, it's Carolina. There ain't. I don't. You can't trust them.
The Panthers, I thought going into this fantasy season, I had a thought with the Panthers, and that was they can't be any worse than they were last year. They found a way to not only blow that completely out of the water. This might be the worst team I've ever seen. And we're talking about the 0-16 Detroit Lions, the 0-16 Cleveland Browns. We've seen some atrocious football teams out there, the 1-15 Miami Dolphins. This Carolina Panthers team, not only do they have absolutely no talent now with their star defensive player getting hurt, they have no future. They tied up so many draft picks in that trade for Bryce Young. I think they may have a first round pick this year, but they don't have a second. So they have to nail their first round pick. And there's so many holes across this roster. They'll probably end up having to trade back, which means that they're not going to be able to get a top player in this draft because they need talent.
For our Delaware audience, I can give you an idea of how bad the Carolina Panthers look right now.
Dave Tepper.
They look like the 2009-2010 Glasgow Dragon football team. And I can say that because I played for that team. I'm sorry. I played on that team. We were like 1-9, if that.
Dave Tepper ruined this franchise to a point that, we're all Eagles fans, so we don't necessarily give a shit. But I will say, like, on the outside looking in, I feel horribly for Panthers fans because they posted like a 9/11 tribute, and the comment section was just overrun with just people that are just like, man, this team's awful. So I feel it's so embarrassing right now. That being said, I agree with you. I don't think Deontay Johnson's a guy to start this week. I think later in the season, I look at offenses sometimes that are bad. Somebody on that offense has to do something to make them worthy of being rostered on a fantasy team. Yeah, you're not starting Deontay Johnson, but I think he may have 1 week where you could use him as a bye week replacement. But other than that, I would stay away from him. I do want to respond to Jack earlier. You said, Dennis, you said Chris Olave. I'm actually going to say this Cardinals-Rams matchup is like my low-key fantasy football production honey hole this weekend. Both teams' defenses are atrocious. They just go up and down the field. They're not great. I think these offenses, though, are going to produce at a level that'll make a lot of fantasy owners happy. So, yeah, you're honestly, in terms of a confidence perspective, you're probably going to start Olave because you're probably a little more confident with him getting something against Dallas. This could be a game where Marvin Harrison Jr., and again, we're taking a risk here, but you don't play fantasy football to finish 7th or 6th. You play it to finish number 1. Marvin Harrison Jr. could have a week this weekend that'll make you, if he's on your bench, will make you regret not putting him in your lineup. That's my hot take.
I think Jonathan Gannon fucking regrets, and the whole franchise regrets spending all that capital on a guy that was like, I'm open. I mean, how frustrating has that got to be too for everybody, especially Marvin Harrison being a guy from this area.
I mean, it was for Marvin Harrison owners out there, and I didn't take him. I kind of wanted him to fall to me a little bit because rookie wide receivers that earlier a little messy. But I will say this: that play, it's a little misleading. He's wide open. I think that wasn't Kyler Murray's first read on the play. It ended up being a first down anyway. Kyler took off and got the run. He was under pressure, so there are some things there, but we have to take into consideration. There's important context to that play that has to be processed. But it was funny. It's very indicative of the Cardinals. They're not a team, I think, that's going to be a serious threat to even make the playoffs right now. They just have their defense is just a little too weak. But that does segue into my stardom situms. And my number 1 start this week for quarterbacks is Matt Stafford, just because this matchup is so sweet for fantasy production. He put up 14 points last week against Detroit. That's a really good defense right there. He finished his quarterback 13. And that's still, I mean, if you're in a 12-team league and you started the 13th best quarterback, there's a quarterback better out there, but that's not terrible. And I think this weekend against Arizona, who allowed 232 passing yards and 2 touchdowns to Josh Allen. And Josh Allen, mind you, is not a quarterback that primarily throws the ball, and Buffalo's not an offense that primarily throws the ball. I think with a team like the Rams that are just going to be chucking and ducking because it's going to be a back and forth type game, Kyler's going to score a ton of points. Matt Stafford's going to score a ton of points. You have Cooper Kupp. He'll get Cooper Kupp this week. If you can start him in any league, if you have him in any league, you have, in my opinion, you have the wide receiver number 1 this weekend going into this weekend. He's going to have such insane production because no Puka. And I don't think the game script's going to be that heavy on the run. So they're just going to be chucking and ducking. Earlier, I think Dennis, if we get back to it, your waiver wire pickup, you have Colby Parkinson, a great streaming tight end this weekend. Yeah, this matchup is my sweet spot, honey hole. Pluck as many players from this Arizona, LA matchup, Rams Cardinals matchup as you can. My number 2 stardom cinnamon. I couldn't agree with you more, Dalton, in your video this week on the at Sleeper 302BIRDS page. Najee Harris is going to have a fantastic week. Denver last week allowed 18.9 points to Kenneth Walker. The game script in this one is going to favor more of a balanced attack for both offenses, and they're starting Fields again unless Russell Wilson miraculously makes has his calf recover. It's going to be a running game for Pittsburgh. It's going to be a running game for Denver. They're going to run it down each other's throats, and Najee Harris is the perfect bowling ball for that offense. My final pickup, and again, I couldn't agree with you more, Dalton. Pick him up, throw him right in your starting lineup. Brian Thomas is going to have a fantastic day. Now, you're probably sitting there saying, man, Cleveland, they're a great defense, a great run defense. They're not a great defense against the pass. They really only kind of have one pass rusher, and their defensive backs are a little soft. 14.7 points last week versus Miami was Brian Thomas. He had a 77% snap share. Even if this game goes the way of Cleveland, you're still going to see a lot of production by Brian Thomas because I think Lawrence just likes this guy. This guy's a difference maker. He's never had a receiver quite like Brian Thomas in his professional career in the NFL. I don't think Christian Kirk is anything that's going to change a game. He's a good number 2 receiver, but he's not anything that's going to change a game. And when he had Calvin Ridley last year, they didn't utilize him correctly. Brian Thomas is a fantastic receiver for Trevor Lawrence. And I think that bond is only going to grow, and this is going to be a great weekend for it. Guys that I would sit going back to that Cleveland matchup, yeah, they're a really good run defense. So if you have Travis Etienne in your lineup this week, you're doing so with caution. If you have a chance to sit him, I would sit him because last week against the Cleveland Browns, Ezekiel Elliott finished 24th, and it would have been a whole lot worse without that touchdown. And Cleveland, their run defense is going to really suffocate the Jaguars. It's going to be a passing game script, in my opinion. I think Cleveland's going to get a little bit of a lead here, and Jacksonville will have to kind of throw to keep up. And also, and I know we're going to go back to you with this, Dennis, for one of your waiver wire pickups. I think we're dealing with a split backfield in Jacksonville. I don't think this is Travis Etienne's backfield to kind of run away, which going into the season, everyone thought this was Travis Etienne's backfield. But I think we're dealing with a bit more of a split production or a split workload. And I'm not so into that because last year, Tank Bigsby did nothing to kind of make me go, oh, yeah, that guy needs to be on a roster. He fumbled plenty of times, in the worst times he would fumble. He never really kind of took off. He looked like he was running in mud. And now all of a sudden, it's like a 50-50. Doug Peterson confounds me as a coach. I know Eagles fans love him. He confounds me. I love him. I thank you for the Super Bowl, Doug. He confounds me as a coach. He is the most perplexing coach I've ever seen.
If there's things that Doug Peterson can do well, and I don't mean cut you off.
No.
And we saw it the Super Bowl year, is he knows how to take a backfield and generate as much production as he can. And the thing about it is, you think about the Super Bowl year, we had Ajayi, and then we had LeGarrette. We had what was it, Blunt.
LeGarrette. Yep. Corey Clement.
I think if he alters how he gives them the ball and he splits it, either if it's a 40-60 split, 70-30, whatever, to take some of the pressure off Bigsby and put more towards Etienne, you're going to see a dominant backfield. And running both of them, they both bring different styles of running to the plate. Sure. So that's why I definitely said pick up Bigsby, because I think you're going to see something different out of him this year. Doug's had another year to work with him, tell him what he needs to do, what he needs from him. He's built off of this before, how he had to rebuild a running back room. So, I mean, again, don't panic on Bigsby. I'm telling you.
No, and don't panic on Travis Etienne either. Again, I think split backfields are great for wins and losses and trying to win a football game. My concern is for fantasy implications. You took Travis Etienne in the back of the first or the second round, and now you're kind of you're kind of sitting there going, oh my gosh, now you're telling me to sit him. This week's going to be a rough matchup for Travis Etienne. I think there's good stuff to come. I do think that both of those guys will eat. I don't think we're going to see it to the extent of like a Miami Dolphins backfield, but you'll get your production from Travis Etienne. It just won't be this week. My number 2 guy to sit this week, and I know we're going to go back and forth on Chris Olave all year, but Chris Olave versus Dallas. Last year, receivers against the Cowboys, this was all 4 Browns receivers. So this is 4 receivers, 9 catches, 1 touchdown, 53 yards. That's that's 20.3 points. That's fantastic for one guy. That was broken amongst 4 receivers against this Dallas defense. That's 4, like the highest scoring fantasy receiver last week was Jerry Jeudy. If you're going to start Chris Olave this week, you're doing it because you took him so early and you have no depth, or you're a glutton for punishment. My number 3 sit this week, Jamar Chase. I am not vibing with the Joe Burrow stuff right now. Zay Flowers last week against this Kansas City Chiefs defense, 11.1 fantasy points. And I mean, overall, the passing attack for the Ravens, it went exclusively to tight ends. So I think what's going to happen with Kansas City against the Bengals, they're going to bring a ton of pressure on Burrow. He's going to have to get the ball out quickly. I don't know if that's going to Jamar Chase. I think that might go to maybe a slot guy in Ishavas. It might go to Jermaine Burton if he's available. They might start to dump it off to running backs and tight ends. I don't see this being a great matchup for Jamar Chase. Granted, you're still probably going to start him, but if you have the opportunity with some wide receiver depth, I would consider sitting Jamar Chase this week.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
think
I
we're
would
going-
stay as far away from the Bengals as I can. Like you said earlier, Benny, I mean, I just want to hit off that real quick. I don't know if it was those all orange uniforms. I don't know if it was the blonde hair, but it's fucking something. And they don't look like the same Cincinnati Bengals with that chip on their shoulder. The team that can take down, the only team that we've seen that can take down the Kansas City Chiefs. So, I
Yeah,
mean, they just
I
don't
make
look
a lot
good,
of
and
my
I'd avoid
decisions.
everything with them. Zach Moss, though, I did want to say real
Yeah.
quick, he's been a pretty good replacement for Joe Mixon. I was a little bit worried about how that run game was going to look, and I thought he was kind of wasn't he in Buffalo before, I think?
He was in Indianapolis last year, Buffalo before that, and I mean we've
He's
seen
worn all the
spurts
blue.
of it. Yeah, he's trying to collect all the blue. Maybe he'll be on the Panthers next year, but
Yeah.
well, he obviously likes blue uniforms. He's trying the Bengals out this year. I think I just broke Dennis. I think Zach Moss is going to be their goal line back. Chase Brown got a lot of hype this offseason. He's explosive. I think he has talent. We can get into this in future podcasts. I have a list of running backs that I think later in the season, teams are just going to look at him and say, "You're the more talented back. We're going with you."
I was going to say, do you think it almost helps Moss's stock out with them being like such a dumpster fire right now in week 2 to where they're like, fuck it, let's not overcomplicate it. Let's run the ball. And somebody who's a mediocre running back now could become top 5 for fantasy.
And you saw last week, Derrick Henry. Now, again, I want to preface this. I'm not comparing Zach Moss to Derrick Henry, but Derrick Henry was able to have a decent game against the Chiefs. It wasn't anything amazing. It wasn't the Saquon game, but he was startable versus the Chiefs. I think Zach Moss is startable versus the Chiefs this week because I look at this Bengals offense. They're not really going to be able to get much going with the passing game. Somebody, again, let's all say it together. Somebody has to do something. And I think Zach Moss is going to be the guy to do that in this one.
The one, so I just got fan questions texted to me, which if you're watching the show, don't hesitate to put them in the comments.
Yeah.
It's kind of jumping us into our next thing here. Shout out to Sleeper for being a sponsor for us. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for all your help that you've done to help us get this show going. Definitely want to hit you guys with this one. They said, would you start Justin Herbert or Baker Mayfield?
Baker.
It's the same thing I said.
Baker's got that edge right now. Baker has all the swagger. Baker has all the cards. I heard a Cleveland Browns fan call into the radio. This was just a reel I was watching last night.
I know what you're talking.
Yeah, you saw that too. And he just breaks down these stats. And the Cleveland radio, and it's just like, what the fuck is that? What is that? And he's like, that's Baker Mayfield and there's Sean Watson. And he hangs up, and it's just like, what are the Browns doing? But I think Baker Mayfield is actually somebody that I've doubted. I've doubted him everywhere he's went. And then I saw another clip of Baker because I went so far down the Baker Mayfield lore of him fucking taking defensive line snaps last year with the Carolina Panthers. So all of those things really tell me that Baker Mayfield is in a good place mentally right now with his ego, with his self. And he just knows when he needs to, he can chuck that ball up to Mike Evans. So I got Baker.
They said it during the game. Sorry, Dalt. They said it during
the game
I'm done. Last week. They showed him pictures with him and his family, and they said his mindset's in a better place. So I don't think the knock-up rule's in effect with Baker Mayfield. Just saying, it just seems like he's in a better place. I'm happy for him because I mean that kid's been through it from Cleveland
this
to
goes
Carolina.
Back.
It's just one of them things. That kid has got a lot, and he's good. Yeah. He might not play for Philly, but that's a guy that he'll deliver. Now,
I just want people to think about this. The Panthers had Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield on their roster. And you saw week 1, Sam Darnold had a fantastic week because he's throwing to the best receiver in football, or one of the best receivers in football. And Baker Mayfield had a fantastic week because he's getting a chance to throw to one of the greatest receivers in football. Mike Evans could retire today and walk right into the Football Hall of Fame. That's not a hot take. Look what the Panthers have now. Like they botched that. Chris Godwin, yes, Chris Godwin too. But I'm more focused on the quarterbacks. You go from Sam Darnold to Baker to Bryce Young. Bryce Young is like, those two look pretty solid. I think they're going to be top 15. I think Baker's a top 5 quarterback in fantasy potentially this year. He could have a fantastic year, top 10, top 5. Sam Darnold to me is definitely top 15. Bryce Young might not be top 32. There could be a backup quarterback out there that has a pretty solid week, and I would rather have that over Bryce Young for the whole season. Bryce Young looks atrocious. He can't throw the ball downfield. He can't see downfield. It's really bad. But do we want to finish up waiver wire stuff, and then obviously if there's any more fan questions?
If you
go ahead and bring us down.
Malik Neighbors, do not panic.
Yeah, don't panic on Malik. I think Malik's going to be fine. Honestly, this is probably a matchup to start Malik.
I mean, it just he doesn't because of the situation he's in with Daniel Jones. I mean, it still doesn't matter. Malik is Malik. If he gets open and they can get the ball to him, he's still going to be productive in points for you. He's still a rookie. You're going to see a lot out of this kid in a short period of time. So don't panic on Malik.
No.
That was one I wanted to hit on. If you got Gabe Davis, don't panic on Gabe Davis either because Brian Thomas being down there. Trey Tucker without Las Vegas, I wouldn't really panic on him. Again, you're dealing with a second-year head coach that is now under about to get his full year with Antonio Pierce there, and then you're also dealing with Gardner Minshew as your quarterback. So you have a lot of things being thrown at you in a lot of ways. I know the Buffalo Bills game's already over, but if you got Keon Coleman, don't panic with him yet either. Yeah. Just putting that out there.
That was game script. I mean, Buffalo was able to run it right down Miami's throat. Why, when you're doing that, all of a sudden you're scaling back some pass things. And we already knew going into this Joe Brady wanted to establish the run. So yeah, Keon Coleman, if you took him early, I mean, I don't know why you would do that, but I think Keon Coleman's a great guy to kind of, later in the year, he's going to have some really solid performances. And, that chemistry is only going to build with Josh Allen. If you're in a keeper league, he's going to be fine.
That's all I had.
So I have waiver wire stuff. The three guys I would pick up this week. Alan Lazard is still available in 43% of leagues. It should be way less. He's Aaron Rodgers' best friend. He had 26.9 fantasy points in the late part of the game where you get all your spam PPR production. He was not going to Garrett Wilson. He was going to Alan Lazard, and it was 100. And then the one that jumps out at me is he was on the field for 100% of offensive snaps. 100% of offensive snaps Alan Lazard was on the field for. He is a great depth piece to put on your bench and even potentially in some matchups throw into your flex position right now. Alan Lazard's fantastic and still available again in 43% of leagues. That is shrinking, though. Next week, he will not be a guy that you see on the waiver wire. Brandon Cooks, still available in 49% of leagues. Jake Ferguson's hurt, and he might go. I think they're going to scale back targets towards him, and those have to go somewhere, and I think they're going to go to Brandon Cooks. And he was at a 79% snap share, 7 targets already last week. That goes up to 10 or 11 with the Jake Ferguson injury. You're looking at a pretty solid flex wide receiver, and I know it's a Cowboys, but he's got good matchups week 3 against Baltimore, the Giants in week 4, and Detroit in week 6. And I think those are situations where you could potentially find yourself putting Brandon Cooks into your flex. And then this is a stash guy. He's available in 62% of leagues. Bucky Irving intrigues me so much with Tampa Bay. 9.6 points without a touchdown last week. He had 31% snap share, and he finishes running back 33. So numbers that kind of make you go, but I think they're rosterable. And I think later in the season, again, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a situation where we've been waiting for the Rachaad White shoe to drop for so long. People just don't seem to think he's this amazing running back. He goes into that running back dead zone in drafts, that space in like the 3rd, 4th round where you don't see a lot of production come from running backs. And if I'm a Rachaad White owner, he's not a bad handcuff. I think later in the season, that's going to become more of a split backfield. And if you get up to 50% production or 50% snap share with Bucky Irving, and you saw the production did at 31%, I'd be pretty excited to see what happens later in fantasy leagues. It could be a guy that averages around 10 or 12 points, and that's a rosterable back in most leagues. The drop guys, I think, goes out saying, if you're a Packers wide receiver owner, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, get them off your team. Without Jordan Love, they're just not rosterable. And even with Jordan Love, Doubs saw only 9 points in week 1 against an Eagles pass defense. It's still kind of figuring things out a little bit there. Wicks only had 3 targets. You can very safely get rid of both of those guys. I don't think they're going to be major producers in terms of fantasy. It seems like everything goes through Jaden Reed and Josh Jacobs, and then, maybe even the tight ends, Tucker Kraft, before they get to Romeo Dobbs and Dontavian Wicks. There's not much to kind of soak up there. Oh, Christian Watson, too, is there. Too many mouths to feed, so don't bother with the smaller mouths there. Jordan Addison, 51% snap rate. He got 6.5 fantasy points in 12-team PPR. He's rostered in 84% of leagues. I don't know why. You have the looming suspension. He's got an ankle injury. And even when he was on the field, everything goes through Jefferson to the point where they kind of even forget that Addison's on the field or even on the roster at times. He's just a guy, rough playoff matchups too later. He's got some really good teams he's facing from week 14 to week 16. You can keep Addison comfortably off your roster or at least out of your starting lineup. And then Curtis Samuel for the Bills. I have some friends that are Bills fans, and they've kind of told me all offseason long, don't hype yourself up on Curtis Samuel. What did people do? They hyped themselves up on Curtis Samuel. Oh, he's worked with Joe Brady before. Oh, he's the perfect weapon for Josh Allen. What happened in week 1? He got 2 targets in week 1, and then he's gotten 4 targets in 2 games. They don't use him. They don't, for some reason, use him. He's on the field for 27% of offensive snaps. This guy's rostered in 59% of leagues. What are people seeing here? Like, he's not even the Bills' 4th option to me. So get Samuel off your roster. He's just not worth having right now.
Yeah, I think you're battling something there. To the Rachaad White thing with Tampa, Rashad's always going to be, to me, in my eyes, when I watch this kid play running back, he's going to be one that comes in midseason form and will start to deliver more. Tampa's always been that team that comes out and has running backs start to deliver more towards the middle of the season because the receivers tend to get banged up. But that happens everywhere. With Chris Godwin, with Mike Evans, you've got a solid 1-2 punch there. Baker's got a lot of options to dump off to, and now with them having an identity with a quarterback now that
and now they have McMillan too.
Yeah, you got McMillan in there. There's a lot that's going to open up. It's just there's a lot of things that can happen in week 2 that could shake fantasy to a different level. We're going to see what happens there with week 2. Any fan questions, again, don't hesitate to drop them in the box. We're almost wrapped up here for today. But again, if we can help you guys with anything, we'd love to help you here within the next few minutes. Again, I want to give a shout out to Sleeper. Thank you for sponsoring us. We really appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to Dalton for bringing me and Benny together to do this fantasy show for 302 Birds. Means a lot to us to be given an opportunity to talk to you fans and give you our perspective. If you guys didn't know, or if you haven't been keeping up with everything, we will be live on location, Lincoln Financial Field, tomorrow night, September 16th. The gates open at 12 p.m. We will be in Lot D, probably closest to the 11th Street side. I see something change. We could be over by D1. It just depends. A lot of things planned, a lot of good things to happen. Nick Foles is being honored. He retires as an Eagle tomorrow. I think there's going to be an opportunity to get an autograph. Don't hold me to that, because there's a chance that he might be in the Miller Lite tent. Again, if you get in early, they're limited by supplies last. You see all these posters behind me. Usually there's like 200 printed or something. If you get in there early, you can pick up a game day poster. Shout out to the Philadelphia Eagles for, of course, being our favorite franchise. We appreciate you guys. Shout out to all the 302 Bird podcast team, everybody. DJ Moore. Who's he asking?
Here, let me put it up for you.
Thank you, sir.
Brian Robinson. I would assume he's talking about from, think, let's just assume Jaguars, Brian Robinson, not Commanders, just because of relevance.
Brian Robinson, Brian Robinson.
He would have said junior
Bijan.
maybe, but I'm just assuming because of relevance, he's probably meaning the wide out.
I go Robinson if he's talking Jacksonville. But
could be Bijan too, honestly. Yeah, very
Bijan.
vague B-Rob there. You got to be more specific there, Barlow 020. But go ahead and take us out of here, Dennis. And if you guys don't drop a subscription, Barlow 020, these guys are live every Sunday morning. So if you want your fantasy questions
or
answered
Jordan
next
Mason.
week, we got you.
Jordan Mason, I think, is Pacheco's like too consistent. Jordan Mason's that's tough, because that's all, essentially you're arguing Pacheco or CMC.
I think Jordan Mason's gonna have another big week.
Yeah, I just the way that San Francisco uses their running backs, I would say Mason, but Pacheco's almost. I'll say this. I'll say Mason.
Yeah, I would probably
That's
go
close.
Mason, but I wouldn't sleep on Pacheco. That's kind of one you got to toss up.
Yeah.
Just in coming out of Mike Garafolo, understanding is testing and evaluation is as of this morning, and will determination after walkthrough regarding AJ Brown's status for tomorrow. So we should know hopefully by this afternoon or tonight if he's going to play tomorrow.
Yep.
So you kind of have to take a shot. Are you going to keep him in your starting lineup or take him out? Personally, I'd take him out and just rest him this week, because if you don't want to take that chance of him not playing, but AJ likes to play. But again, ladies and gentlemen, this is 302 Birds Fantasy. I'm your host, Dennis, along with Benny and Dalton. We appreciate you guys stopping by. Good luck this week. We'll see you for week 3. And if you aren't showing up at the link tomorrow, you can also tune in and see all the updates, or come stop by Lot D and see us. See you guys next week.
What we got? 302 birds, Gino Stinks.